Alrighty guys, hi, it's Amanda. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a great day today. As always, if you're new or returning and you haven't yet already, please be sure you're subscribed to the channel. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, leave them down below. I will try my best to see you there. So I have briefly talked about the Phillippis and their video from 2 years ago about talking why they were no longer going to adopt a child from Thailand. And a lot of you guys know my history. A lot of you guys actually became a member or a subscriber of my channel when I covered the Stauffer stuff, because most people understand and know a little bit about me that I am personally a child who was adopted, and these topics really hit close to home for me. And several people were asking me to give my opinion on this, and I am going to in this video. I will say some of my opinions are probably not going to be what people are expecting, but I have taken about a week and a half to really sit back and digest everything in this video, from behaviors to the information that they talk about to their decision. And I have some critiques, I have some opinions about what was said, and I also have some positive opinions about what happened. So I want to start off with the criticism, and I talked about this briefly in a live stream. So my main criticism of them is their behavior in this video. In the first 10 minutes, when they're actually announcing to their audience that they are no longer going through with the agency to adopt from Thailand, they are joking about it, they are laughing about it, and I understand everybody has a different way of coping with things. However, when you compare that to the announcement that they made about Bowser, it's more questionable to me that they found it joking and funny to announce that they're not adopting from Thailand for the sole fact that they couldn't exploit the child on their YouTube channel. So it was very off-putting seeing that. I also have mentioned that I think a few years ago, it must have been like the it thing to family vlog and adoption, because this is around the same time. I think there's a year difference between when the Stauffers did this and when the Phillippis tried to do this. And that's absolutely disgusting in my opinion. If you are someone who is just trying to go through with an adoption because you want to try and gain viewers or subscribers or anything like that, if you're using it for a monetary gain, you really need to check your morals. In my opinion, adoption is something that is very serious. It is life-changing, not only for the family but also for the adoptee. And I don't know if their intentions were pure based off of how they talk about it in this video. I don't know, I can't say for sure, but based off of what I saw, I don't necessarily feel that their heart was fully in it. If their heart was fully in it, they would not have cared that they had to take the steps that were necessary to protect their future child. But instead, they wanted to be able to monetize their process and monetize the child, integrating into their culture and their lifestyle and their family. And that is really sad. And it's really sad to know that this has happened and it didn't end well with the Stauffers. Who's to say that it wouldn't have ended the same with the Phillippis? I applaud the agency that they were working with that made sure that they informed this family of their policies. And I hope and I believe that now a lot of international adoption agencies are changing their policies when it comes to international adoption and people being able to monetize and videotape. In the States, most states do not allow you, if you are a foster parent or you have adopted children, to have them be viewed publicly. And it's for safety reasons for your family and for the family that the child came from. For example, if a child is removed from a family and the family doesn't agree with it, and you were to post stuff of that child, you are allowing that previous family to potentially be able to figure out where you are and harass you and harass the child and make it harder for the child to adjust. I can say from personal experience, while I was in foster care and didn't know any different, during a visitation, I actually gave my maternal grandmother at the time the phone number to the house that I was in, and she called relentlessly, and she made it harder for me to not be a part of the family. She guilted me. She always was saying things like, oh, don't you want to be with us? Things like that that were super damaging to me. I was a young kid. I didn't really understand anything at the time of what was going on. And because I gave that information, it made it harder for me, and it made it harder for them, and it made it extremely hard for my foster parent. And that is why agencies and children's services have things in place, because it's to protect the child moving forward, not only their privacy, but also their safety, as well as your family's safety. The fact that some of these family vloggers who have done this adoption process or thought about this adoption process seem to really not understand the safety and the privacy aspect, and they find it as a detriment. And what was a little bit more frustrating for me is this couple was clearly intelligent enough to identify that they could take precautions, they could take steps to still follow through with the adoption, but because that was going to be harder on them and cause more work on their part, it wasn't worth it for them. And when things like that are being said and insinuated, along with the behavior that was exhibited, I personally do not feel that they really had they didn't have the purest reasons for monetizing this adoption. That is my personal opinion based off of what I have seen. Who knows how they actually feel, but how they relayed themselves, how they relayed their comments in that video were very telling and quite frankly upsetting. Some of the positive sides that I want to talk about are, I appreciated the fact that they did talk about some of the processes and expenditures, although they were clearly complaining about it being expensive. But I appreciated the fact that they did open up to their audience and allow their audience to be aware that it is a grueling and hard process to adopt. And the reason it is hard to adopt is because agencies want what's best for the child at the end of the day. They are the ones who are advocating for the child. They are the ones who are wanting the children to have the best life moving forward. So there are very strict, strenuous processes to be approved to adopt. And it can be expensive, especially if you're adopting from international, overseas. It can be even more expensive. I did appreciate the fact that they sat there and they did kind of talk about some of the processes and the home studies and what all went into that to educate their audience. I think that was a good way to kind of talk about it. However, it did seem to me that they were talking about it in a negative connotation, that oh, they had to do this and they had to go to this appointment. And again, it seemed to me that they weren't really grasping the full picture of why agencies require these things. At the end of the day, it is always for the children to be placed with the best fit so disruptions don't happen. We have publicly seen what can happen when a disruption happens with the Stoffers. And I'm not going into that. I'm not going to talk about that. If you are interested on my viewpoints about the Stoffers, I have a multitude of videos where I talked about their situation from my perspective and from information that they were putting out when all of that happened last year. I see a lot of creators trying to compare them to the Stoffers, and at the end of the day, I can see where people are making the comparison, but at least this family was aware enough to understand that they were being selfish in the fact that they wanted to adopt for monetary gain, in my opinion, and the agency maybe caught on to that, or were just trying to cover all of their bounds and said, hey, you can't film the child, and they retracted from that. I do understand that they did say that they were going to try for other countries in adoption, but I believe they got pregnant on their own and haven't followed through or moved forward with that process, which to me makes me question even further if they had the purest intentions when adopting. People who adopt for the right reason are a godsend, and I mean that with everything. It is so hard on the families, it is so hard on the children. If it's a child who has suffered any trauma, having to work through that and learn how to integrate this new child into your family and love them wholeheartedly with flaws and everything, it takes someone who has the utmost patience. And really, I get emotional talking about this because all I do is I view my parents and my family, and I don't want to get emotional, so I'm not going to dwell on it too long. But people who do adopt for the purest reasons, I could never tell you guys how much I respect you and how much you guys mean to children like me when I was 10 years old. And to know that there are people on platforms who are only potentially thinking or venturing down this path or idea just for monetary gain is so heartbreaking, because it can be irreversible damage. If you're not doing it for a pure reason and you're doing it because you want to gain clout or whatever it is, you could potentially be causing a whole heck of a lot more pain and trauma than what they would have had previous to being subjected to being on a family vlogging channel. So all in all, I find it as almost a blessing in disguise that Thailand, the agency, had told them this and they had retracted and then gotten pregnant on their own. I find it really as a blessing in disguise, because from what they said and how they behaved, in my opinion, I don't think they had the purest intentions. And I think that maybe personally, I feel a child was probably kept from another stoffer situation. I don't necessarily feel comfortable comparing the two because they didn't follow through with it, and maybe it was, time just working itself out, karma, whatever, that prevented this from happening. But I'm so glad it didn't get to the point that what situation happened with the stoffers. And I'm happy that they did try to give some kind of education around what kind of process goes into adoption. I don't necessarily know if I enjoy all of how they talked about it, because like I said earlier, they did kind of talk about it in a negative way, and kind of, to me, it seemed as if they were almost complaining about the steps that they had to take. But if you really wanted to have an adopted child, people don't complain about those steps. Does that make sense? I hope all of my thoughts came through on this. I definitely could go further into my opinions, but I do want to maintain composure, and I did want in this video to just be a good soundboard and have my opinions go out there respectfully, although they clearly have some issues with respect of their own, in my opinion. But I wanted this to be a little bit more, rather than someone ripping them apart and tearing all of their decision making to shreds. I did want to shed light on the positive of that situation, and the fact that another child wasn't potentially put in a situation that the Stoffers had put that child in. And also the fact that I appreciated they at least tried to give some kind of education around the process and talk a little bit about what they were experiencing, even though I don't necessarily agree with the delivery of how they did it. I still appreciate the fact that they tried to incorporate some kind of education in their video. But with all of that being said, please let me know what your thoughts are down below. I will try my best to see you guys there. I hope everyone is having a good day, evening, or night, wherever you guys are. And until next time, bye guys.